this is our webinar on churches going solar, how it's done, and how policy change can help. I will be introducing my co-panelists here in a moment, but first, before we get, actually, I will be introducing them right now. Actually, be letting them introduce themselves. So as I said, I'm the Pennsylvania Program Director of Solar United Neighbors, and I'm based here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I will hand it over to Kim to introduce herself.
My name's Kim Anderson, and I work for the Evangelical Environmental Network. I'm the field representative for Pennsylvania and Ohio, and I'm really excited to be here. Glad so many people are excited about solar for churches, and at EEN, we're passionate about caring for the least of these, and solar is one way that we can take pollution out of our air, and churches getting on board with that is really exciting.
Preston, why don't we go over to you?
Okay, my name is Preston Shimer. As you can see, I'm the chairman of the Sustainability Committee at St. Paul's Episcopal Church, which is located in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, Mount Lebanon. The major things that I work on are related to both the environment, but also political action. I'm very active in the League of Women Voters as well as the church.
And hello, everybody. I'm the Reverend Mitch Hescox. I'm President and CEO of the Evangelical Environmental Network. I live in York County, Pennsylvania. I did pastor a local church for almost 20 years. And before now I'm in almost my 13th year as president of EEN. And so we're really glad that you're with us tonight. And hopefully you'll learn how creation care is a matter of life and how we can take steps as churches to reduce our carbon footprint, reduce pollution in general. And so we're just so glad that you're here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. So this probably isn't your first Zoom, but if it is, or if you need a refresher, you can ask us questions at any time using the Q&A feature on Zoom. And you'll see that Q&A button either at the bottom or the top of your screen. You can ask your question, and then we'll take a break towards the end to answer those questions. We'll also might be able to answer some of them just as we go, typing into the question box so you can see your answer come up there. If you'd like to, feel free to use the chat, both to comment on what you're hearing, to, talk to other people here, and be sure to select under the to field, select the drop-down menu and hit everyone so you can be sure that everyone is seeing your messages. And after the webinar, we're going to be sharing out a link to the recording. So this webinar is being recorded, so you can share. You're more than welcome to share that with others. And if anyone wasn't able to make it, that's how they can view it. If you have any technical difficulties, you can reach out to us quickly at getinvolved@solarunitedneighbors.org. Now, be nice. We like to have a lot of dialogue, and we like to have a lot of lively dialogue, but of course, be respectful, be courteous, be mindful of others' feelings, step up and step back. Please don't be shy. We do want to hear from you. We want to hear what you think about the information you're hearing today. Now I'm going to pass it back over to Kim to lead us in an opening prayer.
Okay, if you would pray with me. Dear God, thank you for this time together. I pray that you'll open our minds, and I know there's going to be a lot of information shared. I just pray that you'll help us remember the things that you want us to remember. And for anybody who's thinking about going solar, I just pray that you would lead them through the steps and lead them to the right people to answer questions, and let this be a beginning of that tonight. We pray for the children of Pennsylvania and the pollution that is often in many areas of Pennsylvania is making it difficult for children to breathe, and just ask that you can help us as your people to care for the least of these and care for our children and help us to clean up the air. That's in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, part one, we'll talk through the practicalities of how churches, and really any kind of tax-exempt organization, can go solar. But first, a quick primer on Rooftop Solar 101. So why would anyone want to do this? What are the general benefits that come with this? Well, when you have solar on your property, whether it's on your roof or somewhere else on the property, any excess energy you generate, so you're offsetting your electric bill. Everything you generate is energy you don't need to buy from your electric company. And then if you generate more than you need, which often happens during the sunny summer months, you'll export that back out onto the grid. Your electric company will give you credits on your bill for that exported energy. And you'll be building up a bank of this extra energy, these energy credits over the sunny parts of the year. And then during the winter, when you're probably not generating as much as you need with your solar panels, you can buy any extra energy you need from the electric company. But if you've built up this bank of credits, you can instead spend down those credits, or like rollover minutes used to work on cell phone plans. So the end result is your energy bills end up much lower after going solar, and eventually solar installation will pay for itself and then some. So there's thousands of dollars of additional savings after it pays for itself. And these are installations that last 25, 30 years, so they're a long-term investment on your home. So obviously this comes with long-term energy savings, lowering your electric bill. There's also a separate revenue stream called SREC income, Solar Renewable Energy Credits, SRECs. We'll explain more about how those work, but it's a credit you generate every time you generate 1,000 kilowatt hours of energy, and they're sold on a market for cash. So it's an additional revenue stream to further defray the cost of going solar. And then for churches or other houses of worship who are going solar and saving all this money on their electric bills, those savings can then be spent for things you would rather be spending money on, like mission work. And then of course, more solar, especially in a place like Pennsylvania, where we have a particularly dirty electric grid, means cleaner air and water. It means you're supporting local jobs. Most solar jobs are in sales and installation, and those are jobs you can't outsource. Those are jobs that are going to be likely coming from somewhere in Pennsylvania to do that installation for you. And then also solar is generally very popular, whether you're in a rural or an urban area, Republicans or Democrats. If you see this graph here, this is data from a 2019 survey from the Center for Rural Pennsylvania Attitudinal Survey from 2019. And they asked, which of the following options holds the greatest promise for addressing Pennsylvania's energy demands in the next 5 years? And you can see the clear winner was investing in renewable energy sources such as solar and wind. And that was almost equally true for rural and urban respondents. So generally speaking, everybody loves solar. And when you have solar on your church, that's an exciting thing that it often gets news coverage. It raises your local profile, and it can appeal to new congregants who are interested in environmental stewardship, and especially younger congregants. It can be a great way to attract them. Now, this is something that has been done before in a lot of different places, and also in a lot of different ways. So according to a 2019 report from Interfaith Power and Light, there are over 770 congregations that they counted who have gone solar. I'm sure that number is a lot higher now, and I'm sure there's a lot they weren't able to find, but it is becoming increasingly common for houses of worship to install solar. Now I'm going to hand it over to Preston, and he's going to tell the story of how his own congregation, St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Mount Lebanon, went solar very recently. Preston, over to you. Thanks, let me know when you want me to click those slides.
Do that. This is the front view of St. Paul's. This is the one you would see from Washington Road. And to the left of the building, which you can't see in this picture, but later on you'll see in some other pictures, there is a Sunday school wing that is attached to the back of the church. We have a slate roof, and slate is not really the best kind of a roof for solar. So we did not contemplate the solar on the pitched roof, even though from a collection point of view, the sun is on it most of the time. It'd be a great spot. But instead, it's on the roof for the Sunday school wing, which we'll take a look at a little bit later. So Henry, next picture, please. Okay, the interesting thing about sustainability is that you have to put it in context. Mount Lebanon is located, as I said, in the South Hills of Pittsburgh. It's very much a middle class kind of community. Most of the people have worked in industry, and they tend to be fiscally conservative, is one way of possibly putting it. The impact of climate change has been a little bit harder for this population to come to grips with. But what was really interesting is to see that in the recent time, that climate change has come to mean a lot more. And as I mentioned in the slide, doing something about climate change issues for some members just was the right thing to do. And those are the members who typically view actions in a much more holistic way, because whenever you do something which takes away a major source of pollution, which is what you do when you stop buying energy off the grid, and you do something like put solar on a building, you're impacting the environment in a very positive way. For those viewers who are not necessarily in the Pittsburgh area, we have a significant air pollution problem. We have had it for years, and it's largely driven by coal-fired power plants. This has resulted in bad health problems in some parts of our areas. It's not really a surprise that we have a fantastic medical establishment in Pittsburgh with world-class hospitals that deal with cancer and stuff. Well, some of it is due to our air pollution. So anyway, those are the folks who pretty much understand climate change and sustainability. But there's another part of the population that, yeah, they understand it, but it still has to be figured out on a spreadsheet, and they got to be able to save some money. So the response to the congregation by our vestry, which in the Episcopal Church is the group that runs the church, was to establish a committee and to look into climate change and what we might do. And this group did a good job of researching and came up with a whole list of options, which they then got approved by the vestry. And like you might expect, we did the low-hanging fruit, as it's called, first. We went through and we changed all of our light bulbs so that they're all LEDs. We put in motion sensors so that they are turned off automatically because people have a tendency never to turn off the lights. We took a look at our HVA systems and to look for things we could replace that result in energy reduction, things like ancient air conditioning systems and things. We found that we could do something by putting in smart controls over the heating and air conditioning. And then we did a major replacement of the 1950s vintage steel casement windows, which we replaced, frankly, with wood windows, double panes, and they are amazing in how they reduce the heat load requirements for the buildings. But then we came to renewable energy. And we did, again, a bit of a thorough study because we wanted to consider our opportunities with thermal, because it's a possibility. And that's when you take heat out of the ground and so forth. We wanted to look into wind because everywhere in Pittsburgh, you're either in the valley or on a hill. If you're in the hill, it seems like you ought to be able to use the wind. And we also studied solar. Solar turned out for us had the most potential. So let's go to the next slide. As I mentioned, most of our leadership tends to be spreadsheet types. So you can imagine that we collected just about every relevant statistic, collected it, analyzed it, studied it, and wanted to see what the results were. One of the things that this kind of a population also likes to do is they like to get some expert advice. So we were fortunate to have access to a company called Soulbridge Energy Advisors. And we added them to the team. Now, what Soulbridge does is they are a broker. Everybody's got to make a living somehow. What Soulbridge does is it comes into a situation like ours and works with the study group, our sustainability group, but and took us through the entire process right through to going out for bids. They happen to make their money as a broker when they are paid by the vendor who ultimately will get a contract. So there's no upfront charge to using a service like this, and it becomes part of the final project if it gets approved. Well, Soulbridge was very helpful in developing a plan that was very easy for us to consider, and we evaluated a lot of options. As I mentioned, they didn't have an upfront payment, and along the way, there was one thing, one piece of information that we learned that frankly tipped the project and got it approved. Let's go to the next slide. In our area, and this is probably true of most churches, you're from the point of view of the energy supplier, you are a business, you're not a residence. And consequently, you have an electrical contract that will provide for what do they call normal usage, and then also peak usage. Our supplier is Decaying Light, and we actually have three components of our energy bills, which you can see on the screen. The blue line are the fixed cost, and this is what is basically the cost for maintaining the grid and the lines coming into the building. Our normal usage cost is the red line, and then the way that the rules are that if you go above what is the established usage limit on any day, at any point in time, and frankly, for a matter of minutes, the price you're going to pay for your energy shifts from the normal usage cost into the peak cost. And in our case, because of the way the churches are, and other churches would have the same experience, I think, we were very, very busy on weekends, and typically went into the peak cost area on a weekend. Now, we didn't have to do it every weekend, just one weekend a month pushed our entire electrical bill into the peak rate limit. What we found in analyzing our solar potential for this project was that we would be generating enough electricity to keep us out of the peak rate. And that alone provided a significant savings on paper at this point to satisfy the spreadsheet folks that this was a financially feasible project. So let's go to the next slide. So things really started to come together. We determined the size of the project that we would need. Our system, and it was based on where we could put it. We, as I mentioned, have a wing on the church, which is for the Sunday school. It has a flat roof. It's also protected by a little parapet. So we actually had a really ideal situation for solar panels on a flat roof. It meant that we could use a ballast mount racking system, which basically means that the solar panels are held in place by little brackets that are held down by sandbags on the roof. So there's no penetration of the roof, which with a flat roof, you really don't want to penetrate it because they leak like crazy. So in any event, our system side is 18.4 kilowatts. We have 51 360 watt panels. We did want them to be manufactured in the US, and they are. We have one, Sunny is the brand, tri-power inverter in the system. And our anticipated first year production was 20,000 kilowatt hours. As I mentioned, SolarBridge was involved in managing the proposal and the bidding process. We had set a budget for the project at $70,000. At the time when we were working through this, the church was also undertaking a capital campaign. So our request to be included on the capital campaign was frankly small enough that they let us to be included. So the funds were raised. So we were able to pay for this project from capital funds. We were not borrowing any money. We completed the project. It was installed during 2018, and it was blessed by the Episcopal Bishop of Pittsburgh, Dorsey McConnell. The final project came in at a little over $49,000, which again, for those spreadsheet folks, it was under budget. So let's take a look at the next slide. This is some pictures of the installation. On the left is the view of the Sunday school building. You can obviously see it's got a flat roof. The ladder you see against the wall is actually the way that is like a little elevator. Each panel was pulled up on this elevator, or rather a ladder, to the roof and then manually lifted off. On the right side, this is the way the panels are laid out. If you look really carefully, you can see that under the panels, there are the ballasts, and out of the ballast actually come the brackets. There will be another view that you'll be able to see the way that looks. And then if we go to the next slide, this is the day that Bishop McConnell blessed the panels. They had been a lot wetter than they were with that little bit of holy water, but it was a very exciting day. What you can't see here is that the access to this roof is through a very tiny window. And so we had to haul all of the bishop's gear through the window, get it up there, get him through the window, and then he had to get dressed up in his regalia to do the blessing. And frankly, the power just keeps coming and coming. So that's the St. Paul's story, Henry.
Thank you. And we have a couple minutes for some questions if anyone wants to ask questions of Preston specifically, and you can just stick those right in the Q&A box. We'll also have time for questions at the end. I see one, Preston, from Rob Montgomery. How long did the installation take?
It went pretty rapidly, actually. Probably it was 2 months. And that included the prep time on the roof, getting everything staged. They actually spent maybe 3 days in raising the panels and putting them in place. The electrical connections and so forth took longer.
I see a question from Kathy. Can Preston share his contact info so we can share his information with other congregations?
Sure. And Henry, do you want to take care of that?
If you would want to just put it in the chat, actually, yeah, I can do that in a second, yeah. Or you can just put it in the chat and people can see it there.
Okay.
I see a question from Elizabeth Robinson. What was the price per watch? Do you remember that, Preston?
No, I don't have that one down.
You know, I did see that Greg Winks from Soulbridge Energy Advisors, who helped you with this project, is on here. So if he remembers that number, he can type it in the chat now, if people are curious. And then another question from Liz Robinson for Preston. How much is the church saving? Do you have an idea of your?
I knew that question would come up. You know, we have never gone over into the peak rate since we've installed the system. And then shortly into its life cycle, we encountered COVID and we basically shut down the church. So we have been having a very positive, impact on the grid because we haven't been using the power to speak of. I don't have that information, and I will develop it. My general feeling on that is that since we've got other people who are watching the church finances, if we were not delivering the savings we promised, I would have heard about it. The fact that I haven't heard about it, I view as a good sign. But from Elizabeth, I understand you'd like to have some facts.
From Joy Berge, did you have a choice of installers or did Soulbridge determine who to use?
We definitely had a choice. We had, as I recall, we went out for a fairly wide group of proposal requests. We ended up with 4, I think, and Soulbridge participated in helping us evaluating them. It ended up, frankly, that we went with one differently than the one that Soulbridge actually was recommending, because it was it was a local Pittsburgh installer, and we wanted to keep the business in town. But they definitely helped us And it was fairly, that the way that the information came into us, it was very easy to evaluate the similarities between the bids and the differences.
I see Greg Winks has chimed in. The price per watt was $2.69 per watt.
Thank you. I'll make a note of that.
So there are a lot of other questions here, but I do want to move on. So Preston and Annie, if you're able to answer any of those in the question answer box as we go on, that would be great.
Sure.
Thanks. And if there's any left over, we can try to cover them at the end. So there are a number of barriers to churches going solar. Preston kind of expanded on some of them. But not only is this high upfront cost that you have to either raise money for or finance or figure out a way around, but for churches and really any tax exempt organization, you can't get the tax benefit. So you can't get this, what is now a 26% federal tax credit, which is a huge discount that any homeowner or business can get. And then businesses, but not tax exempt entities, can also take advantage of accelerated depreciation, which can also really dramatically shorten the payback period for solar. Churches, as Preston was saying, are typically on the commercial electric rate, so they're paying a lower price per watt for their energy than a residential customer is. And when you have cheaper energy, that means that's a longer payback period for solar. So the best economic case for solar is when your energy prices, not necessarily your energy usage, but this price you pay per kilowatt hour is really high. And then slate roofs can be really difficult for solar. So some installers will just not work on them. Some of them will charge a premium to work on them. They're just fragile. It's hard to mount solar panels up there. It's easy to accidentally break them if you're working up there. So a lot of churches have slate roofs, and that can be a problem. But of course, if they have space on the ground, above a parking lot, there are other types of solar installations that don't need to go on a roof. So there are a lot of different ways that churches go solar. The simplest and the way that St. Paul's did in Preston's example is just simple ownership, where you have the house of worship purchase at full price, so no tax benefit, own and host the solar array. It's on their property. They paid for it. Maybe they financed it. Maybe they used some kind of loan to pay for it, but they own it. And then in return, they get all those electric bill savings, and they get the solar renewable energy credits, the SREC income that solar array also generates. So this is simple, but it has the downside of having to pay this big upfront cost and having to just not take advantage of the tax credit. But you have pretty substantial electric bill savings. You earn these revenue from SRECs, which isn't an option in every model. There's, of course, lots of financing available. The Sustainable Energy Fund in Pennsylvania offers financing for solar. The Clean Energy Co-op, also in Pennsylvania, can help put the pieces together to finance a solar installation. And then, all kinds of lenders can be used for solar installations. There are solar-specific lenders out there who have specific loan products designed to finance a solar installation. But a lot of nonprofit entities and churches really want to take advantage of the tax credit because it is such a big discount. And to do that, they have to do a much more complicated arrangement known broadly as third-party ownership. And I'll try to walk through this here. So you still have the house of worship have the solar array on their property. They're hosting it. They're receiving the electric bill savings from it. But you have this third party, which could be the installer, the developer of the solar installation, or it could be an LLC, a limited liability corporation specifically formed for this purpose, that actually purchases and owns that solar array, even though it's located on the church's property. So they purchase and own it. They receive the tax benefits, that tax credit, the accelerated depreciation, and they receive, typically they're also owning the SRECs. And then they sign an agreement with the church itself, typically called a power purchase agreement, a PPA, to receive small monthly payments from the church that should be lower than that church's energy savings. So on net, that church is cash flow positive. They're saving more on their electric bill than they're paying as part of this PPA to the third party. Now, when this kind of solution generally works better at scale. So when it's in a solar installer who's acting as the third party here, it needs to be a fairly large array. So the rough number I've heard is at least over 200 kilowatts. That'll kind of depend on the particular market you're in. But it is possible to group multiple church projects together. So, a bunch of different churches in an area who want to go solar, they each get their own solar installation, they each get their own PPA, but maybe there's one third party who's financing all of that. And then that third party that, if it's an LLC, there can be investors in that LLC who could be congregants from that church who's going solar, who are providing that upfront capital, who are providing that tax equity to take advantage of the tax credit, and in return receive a return on their investment. Now, obviously, the advantage of this is you avoid this big upfront cost. The church does. They just have this monthly ongoing cost that is hopefully eclipsed by their energy savings. The downside of this is it's complicated. As you can see, the diagram is complicated. This is a complicated process. It takes, a lot of special expertise to set it up. So people are talking to lawyers and accountants to arrange this. So often they receive some kind of assistance, maybe groups like Solbridge Energy Advisors or other organizations who could help them walk through this process and make sure they're crossing all their T's and dotting their I's. And often with this third-party ownership arrangements, there's an option for the church to purchase and fully own the solar system after that third party recoups their initial investment. And of course, after they own it, they're not making any PPA payments anymore. They're just getting those energy savings. And also they probably now own the SRECs, which they're also getting revenue from. Now, there are a whole array of flavors of third-party ownership. I don't have time to go through every single one of these, and it's kind of a lot to go through at once. But this presentation will be shared out. I hope you'll have an opportunity to look at the recording and look at this in more detail if you're interested. And I want to note that this slide and some of the information I put together here is courtesy of Joy Baxter, who has been helping her own church go solar and has a lot of expertise in this area. And I have her contact information later on in the presentation. She is a great resource on this topic. There's information here. So if you're interested in going deeper, this is kind of a one-on-one level, how a church might go solar, any taxes have any might go solar, but there's lots of organizations in Pennsylvania and nationally to help guide you through this process, including, of course, us at Solar United Neighbors. So if you want to start diving deeper, I recommend reaching out to us or reaching out to one of these organizations here. Now, I mentioned those SRECs briefly, so the solar renewable energy credits. And I want to start talking about what if those SRECs were worth a lot more than they are now. Now, to review, one SREC is earned each time a solar array generates 1 megawatt hour of energy, or 1,000 kilowatt hours of energy. Utilities are buying these SRECs to meet their legally mandated solar targets from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The SREC seller then gets money for that sale, which helps lower the net cost of going solar. And these SREC prices are determined by a market. They're influenced by supply and demand. Basically, the higher demand there is, more utilities need to be buying these SRECs, the higher that SREC price is. Now, in Pennsylvania, our SRECs are only $23 last time I checked, which is unfortunately low. They don't make a huge financial impact in the whole solar return on investment. And you can see how we compare to some of our neighbors here. So West Virginia has no state solar targets, so they have no SRECs. Ohio recently dramatically weakened their state solar targets and has, as a result, very weak SREC values. And then Maryland, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. have very aggressive solar targets. They've been building a lot of solar, and that's been driven by state policy. And as a result, they have much higher value SRECs than we do. So for example, a homeowner going solar in Pennsylvania might take somewhere between 8 and 12 years to break even, to save as much as they spent going solar. In Washington, D.C., because those SRECs are so valuable, and also their energy prices are higher, I believe, it's more like a 2 to 4 year payback period. So this really can have a dramatic impact on the affordability of solar. Now, the specific policy we have in Pennsylvania that drives the value of our SRECs, it's called the Alternative Energy Portfolio Standard, the AEPS. And the core of the AEPS is this language right here. Electric utilities must get 18% of their electricity from alternative sources by 2021. Half of a percent, so 0.5%, must come specifically from solar. So they break up this alternative sources into 10% from actual renewables, 8% from other alternative sources, things like waste coal. And then the target where they have to hit this percentage by is actually May of this year. So it's coming up. Previously, utilities have had steadily increasing targets, but in May of 2021, it's going to stop at 18% alternative, 0.5% solar, and it's going to stay there unless the legislature does something about it. So that solar carve out, the 0.5%, is what directly affects the SREC values. The higher that is, the higher the demand is to buy SRECs, and then the higher the price SRECs sell for. Just to make it a little more clearly, a stronger AEPS with a stronger solar carve out means effectively more solar is installed. There are more people benefiting from solar energy. And existing solar owners, people who have already done it, are now seeing their return on investment accelerate. And just like our SREC values don't look great compared to our neighbors, similarly, our AEPS, our portfolio standard targets, also do not look great compared to our neighbors. And you can see, the renewable energy goals of our neighboring states. I think Maryland is now at 100% by, I can't remember the year, it might be 2050. So they're continuing to increase their goals while we are stuck with this law we passed in 2004. And as a result, we just don't have a lot of solar compared to a lot of other states in the eastern United States. And you can see a lot of the states that have higher amounts of solar are similar climates. Massachusetts has a lot of solar. It's also a cloudy, cold, snowy place. So we can't blame the climate for this. We have more than enough sun to make this work. It really is state policy that is driving us to the middle and then back of the pack here. But thankfully, there is a bipartisan bill coming that we're expecting to see introduced very soon that would update our alternative energy portfolio standard for the first time in a long time. It would require, instead of 0.5% of our energy coming from solar, 5.5% by 2026. So that's an 11-fold increase in the current target. It's definitely achievable. There was a study done by the Commonwealth called Finding Pennsylvania's Solar Future that found we could reasonably get to 10% solar within a decade. So this is, roughly half of that in half the time. But it would substantially increase our SREC values. It would be more people going solar. More churches are able to afford going solar because now the return on investment looks a lot better. And yeah, just more solar in general. Now, Solar United Neighbors, we're an educator about solar. We help people through the process of going solar, but we are also a grassroots organizer. And so we think it's not enough just to go solar yourself, but you should be doing everything you can to make it easier for other people to go solar as well, because it does create all of these shared social benefits like clean air and water that we benefit from. Now, Annie is going to be posting a link in the chat here to an action alert we just released to help you very easily email your state senators telling them to support this legislation that would update the AEPS. And if you join Solar United Neighbors as a member, there's a lot of different ways we can help you do things like scheduling actual meetings over Zoom with your legislator, writing letters to the editor to generate local press, and to rally your community around solar issues like the AEPS. We want to help you be an effective advocate so you can help more people, more houses of worship go solar in Pennsylvania. Are there any questions for me or for Preston or for anybody?
And Henry, could I just add a comment or two?
Yeah, please do, Mitch.
One of the things that most people don't realize is that one of the things that's skewed against solar is just how the market works on coal-fired and even gas-fired electricity. There are a lot of hidden costs out there that actually deflate the cost of electricity, of fossil fuel generated electricity, which impact who we are. And as we put more solar up, increase the AEPS, we actually help to overcome that and actually do much more in protecting our children and the health questions and actually the finance. Now, just as an example, coal really costs almost 15 cents a kilowatt more than we pay in our meter if you have coal-fired electricity. Natural gas is about 5 cents a kilowatt more than we pay. And so already the big utilities and the industry are getting an unfair advantage over people like solar, and we need to take advantage of that. And that's one of the things that policy changes do. It actually can correct these market failures that have been built into the system and work to really make this fair for all people and really show the low cost and the great health benefits of solar. So thank you, Henry.
Yeah, if I could just add to that a little bit, you know, one advantage that fossil sources of energy have in the market is they don't have to pay for their pollution. So, you know, they contribute to bad air quality, they contribute to climate change. We all pay for that. And that's essentially when you don't have to pay for a cost you're incurring, that's essentially a subsidy. And what an SREC is trying to do is trying to take the environmental virtues of solar energy and put a positive price on it. So it's trying to bring what is an externality back into the market, so solar kind of gets a fair share. Okay, let's see. We'll go through some other questions here. This looks like another one for Preston. Would you do it again? Why or why not?
No question, we would do it again. There's a couple of things, if I have the mic, I'd like to respond to. One is that when we all get back together, we have a follow-on project which we will start working on, and that is to put solar in our parking lot using a canopy system. There are some good models in the Pittsburgh area of solar on canopies. It's a fairly common practice in some parts of the country where you have big parking lots. It has the advantage of it putting solar capture in an area that isn't on top of a building or hard to get to. But in addition, it provides shade. And it's interesting that people really like to park their cars in the shade. So that's one thing we're considering. The other thing I wanted to comment on was the third party approach. We had actually discussed that. And if we had failed in our capital campaign, there was a backup plan to approach some of our parishioners who might be able to form an LLC to provide the financing for the third party. That population might have had a chance to enjoy the tax write-offs. We didn't have to do that because we were able to raise the money.
I see a question from Jennifer Pavao here. In Montgomery County and some other PA counties, nonprofits are also eligible to participate in CPACE programs. So for those who don't know, CPACE is Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. It's a type of financing, essentially a loan you can use to pay for energy improvements like solar, except rather than paying back it on a separate loan payments, it's added to your tax bill, the property. So if you sell that property during, where you're still paying it off, the new owner pays off the rest of it, but also gets the benefits of whatever that energy improvement is. Do you know if any congregations in Pennsylvania have successfully used CPACE financing for energy improvements, including solar installations? So I'm not aware of any that have done that. I heard a lot of uncertainty, at least in Allegheny County, about how CPACE works with nonprofits, but I don't know if any other panelists have heard of this. What I have heard about CPACE is just anecdotally, the interest rates tend to be pretty high, like even higher than you could get in like a typical, solar loan that's not connected to the property. So I'm not sure how rapid the uptake has been. Okay. Annie, can you unmute Phyllis? I see she's raised her hand here.
I had two questions, actually. One was a question and one was a comment. The first question was, how likely are we ever going to get that bill that you suggested to pass, given our legislature that's so heavily influenced by coal and oil lobbyists and themselves? And then my second comment was, I tried to fill out the petition, but it said it wasn't available in my area.
Oh, where's you're in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, Montgomery County.
Oh, well, I'm sorry about that. We'll try to get that fixed, and then you can try again. So that your question, it definitely will be an uphill battle with this bill. There are solar champions of both parties in our legislature, but generally there's not a lot of widespread support among legislators for solar energy. There is much more widespread support among Pennsylvanians of both parties for solar energy. And what we think is really important if we're going to win this is making sure that the grassroots voices are heard in this issue. So it's not just industry lobbyists who are talking about this issue to legislators.
And this is Mitch.
Is there anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I would be happy to add it. Of all the potential bills that would help the environment and do something, the AEPS bill is probably the only thing that has a shot this year of passing the legislature. So while it is going to be an uphill battle, it has the most likely chance of succeeding. But it is going to require every one of us, to call our state legislators and senators and say, this is important to us. And for me, it's important for faith reasons. It's a way to save lives. It's a way to save God's creation. Whatever your motivation is for doing it, now is the time to get on board, especially now since it looks like that they're going to get sort of a big break on the Pennsylvania budget this year because of the stimulus money of the $7 billion the state's going to get directly. So they're probably going to end the budget early, which means they're going to looking for something that they need to do and do it positively. So it's time to really get going and impact this as best we can.
And this is essentially a budget neutral, way to support solar too. It's not offering a state subsidy to solar, so it's not pie in the sky. It will be difficult, but it's achievable.
Say, Henry, this is Preston. And it's a question really for Mitch. Do you know what committees the bill is likely to go through? Since in Pennsylvania, the committee chair can be a gatekeeper that can stop things from happening.
My memory is, and Henry, help me if I'm wrong, I think it will probably go through Consumer Affairs on both of them. I'll have to double check that. It has in the past, but I think that's where they'll end up, these bills.
Yeah, I think that's right, but I don't know for sure. And I think that's what we would prefer too. I think that would have a little bit friendlier reception than other places.
And I have personally already talked to the staff director, the executive director of the House Consumer Affairs Committee, and got a lot of work to do there. But I think there's some possibilities. But again, it's one thing that legislators have to know is that you care and that their job is in jeopardy if you don't start caring. And that's even in Pennsylvania, and we have to do a good job both in the urban areas and the rural areas of helping people everybody says that this is an important issue. The polls are great, but we need to turn those polls into action to get this done.
See a question from Kathy. Can Sun provide a list of the Consumer Affairs Committee members? I don't know if I can do that right now. It's not too hard to look up the Pennsylvania House Consumer Affairs Committee. Actually, no, sorry, the Senate. This bill's in the Senate. There will be a House version. But yeah, I don't have that information at my
But
fingertips.
as we send out this recording to people, we'll be happy to send some of those legislators to everybody. If you could just wait till we send out this recording and a thank you note, we will get that information for you.
Yeah.
Henry, while we're waiting for some other questions, there's a couple of other things to add about the St. Paul's experience. One has been the fact that we have solar. It indicated that the church was more concerned about environmental affairs in general, and actually also other social issues. And we have seen an increase in attendance. It sort of differentiated the parish from other churches, and people who have these concerns as Christians are being attracted to come to our church. And the other is that we've had surprisingly good coverage in the media. The picture of the bishop on the roof got front page coverage in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, for example. So those are some intangibles that are interesting.
I just found a list of the Senate Consumer Affairs Committee roster, which I put in the chat here. Preston, I saw another question for you here from Larry Moyer. Are you considering virtual net metering, especially with the parking lot canopy system? Where will the power go if you add the new system?
Well, we haven't actually had to address that particular issue. We probably would consider net metering.
Yeah, so is there additional load that you would want to cover with more solar? Is that what the idea would be behind a new installation?
Actually, it would probably be more we'd like to put more into the grid and basically get off the grid. But we can't because we don't have a battery. But the idea would be we have the space. We really like the idea of a covered parking area, and in addition, like to feed more into the grid.
See a question from Kate Fissel. Any suggestions for locating investors who may be interested in doing a power purchase agreement contract with potentially less than typical profit because they're just interested in supporting solar in churches? I have one idea, and I think I listed their information here, so if I can find it. There's a relatively new organization called Raise Green, which is its goal is to make it very easy to finance third-party solar, including helping find the investors and providing a lot of templatized legal documents. And they want to have it work for smaller projects. So that's somewhere I would look out for that. I don't know if anyone else has any other ideas or anyone in the chat wants to share some ideas. Collective Sun is another organization. They help nonprofits go solar, and they're not looking for super profitable projects. Kathy Rabowski is asking, can Sun provide a list of supporters from both parties, along with writing to our own reps? Perhaps we can write to the supporters and encourage them to keep fighting the good fight. Well, right now we don't know who the co-sponsors will be on this bill because it hasn't been introduced yet. Presumably these lead sponsors, Laughlin and Haywood, are courting co-sponsors. But right now, this is who we know is behind the bill itself, are Haywood from Philadelphia and Dan Laughlin from Erie.
But Henry, I would also add that I would encourage Kathy and others to look up who your representative and senator are if you're not familiar with that. I find that you can just Google and it'll come up for you, and contact them and see if you can get 15 minutes or half an hour on their calendar and share some of this information with them and tell them why it's important to you that we go solar. And like Mitch said, for him, he cares about children. I have kids, I care about kids. Do what you can to make it personal.
Yeah, and I would, this is a Senate bill, but there will eventually be a partner bill introduced in the House. So talk to your state representative and your state senator about this. Really anybody can help move this bill along by co-sponsoring it and voting for it. From Liz Robinson, do you have your experience written up as a case study? If so, could you share it with us? Preston, I guess that's a question for you.
No, I don't actually have it written up as a case study. It's probably a very good idea. I understand why you're asking, because I would have loved to have had one to use myself. I think before I could do that, I have to tie the ribbon on the couple of years versus of actual production history to make the solid case of the savings and how much power we've been generating and those kind of statistics. But once we get back to having our committee together, I've got some good people on the committee who love that kind of engineering analysis, and we probably will put it together as a case.
I'm going to do one more question for Preston, and then I'll give Kim a chance to share some information about how EEN can help you. So for Preston, was anyone in the congregation against the project? And if so, how was this handled?
Lots of people initially you might have said were against it, mostly because there's a kind of a preferred choice to be a little bit ignorant about even things like climate change, and solar. I don't like the way it looks on the roof, those kind of issues. What I found was interesting is the way that some of the early folks who were kind of against it, once they got into it, flipped over. And we had one person I thought was going to be a real obstacle, happens to be, he worked, his professional career is in the industry, and his side career is that he owns some buildings, apartment buildings in various parts of the area. And he ended up being very, very supportive and immediately undertook putting solar on all his apartment buildings because he saw the savings. I don't think he was driven by religious concern or by an environmental concern, but the economic piece did it. So yeah, you're going to find people who are against it, but there's some people who don't like donuts and they still go to coffee hour.
Thank you, Preston. Kim, would you like to share some more information?
Sure. I just wanted to take a minute to share a little bit more about what EEN does. Today we focused a lot on solar, but EEN does a lot in the, in general in creation care and helping people understand, why we want to care about creation. Solar being only one of those ways to do it. So we have Bible studies, resources. We're also looking in the next few months to get together a group of local people. So like in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and have a few groups within the state where when we can meet together again, but for now over Zoom to meet and just, learn more about creation care and how we can care for God's creation. And so if you're interested in becoming a part of that, you can email me at kim@creationcare.org. If you, for any resources, Bible studies, if you want to be a part of that. And then also, I know some of you, it sounds like, are interested in working for, contacting your legislators and things like that. And we're busy. I know Henry and I and others are busy talking to representatives and senators. And so if you would like somebody to go with you, we may already have a meeting scheduled, but it would be wonderful to take somebody from a senator or representative's district along with us. It'll make it easier to get the appointment, and I think they'll listen more. And so if anybody's interested in that, you can feel free to contact me, and we can also, you talk to Henry as well about that. I assume, Henry, that's okay. So reach out if you want to know more about creation care and more broad topics around creation care.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, now if you've never done any direct lobbying before where you've spoken in person to a legislator about an issue, it can be intimidating, but the advantage of now is you just would likely be doing this over Zoom, which makes it a little less scary. And then once you try it out, you'll find it's a lot less scary. It actually, you get this kind of democracy high after you do it, and it becomes, then you want to keep doing it all the time, and you realize the power that you have as a constituent if you're able to speak up. So both of our organizations, we're happy to help you get to that point where you're a confident solar advocate. Well, we're just about at 8 o'clock, and I want to thank Preston for joining us to talk about his own church's experience going solar. That was very valuable. I want to thank Kim and Mitch, who had to jump off earlier, for helping us put this together and co-hosting with us. And I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I hope to be hearing from a lot of you about how we can work together to help, get more solar in Pennsylvania. Some of our organizational contact information and websites are here if you want to learn more about us. But thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Just hanging out to see if there's any last minute questions, but thank you both for joining.
You're welcome. Okay, good luck. Bye-bye.
Have a great evening.
Bye, Preston. Thank you.